recording. Let's just get straight into it. So, I am doing a podcast episode right now because one of the reasons why I really wanted to do YouTube and start vlogging my life was one, to document the memories, and two, to actually improve my English because I feel as though my English skill has declined from the past few years. But I don't really talk much in my videos. So I thought of just dedicating a whole video or like a podcast episode just to practice my skills. And also because I just like to talk. And recently I haven't had anyone who would totally listen to all these stories again because I'm mostly going to be talking about myself. Yeah. So with that, the first topic of my podcast is language. You know, how fitting, how ironic. So I would first like to introduce myself. I'm Kirin. I grew up in Malaysia. I'm bilingual. I can speak, read, and write Malay and English fluently. Somewhat. We'll get into that. And yeah, I grew up in Malaysia. Did I mention that? So my plan is to have this like a podcast, so you could listen to this while you're cooking or cleaning or eating if you want to watch me. But yeah, hang out with me for a while. I don't know how long this is gonna be. Okay, anyways, let's just get right into it. So I grew up speaking mostly English. Yeah, I was those like kids in Malaysia where like, oh yeah, I only speak English. I was honestly one of them. Because I have to blame that on growing up in an international primary school. So I went to an international primary school for 6 years. And in that primary school, I did not take UPSR. My main exam was checkpoint. And checkpoint only had 3 subjects. Compared to UPSR had 5, if I'm not mistaken. Checkpoint has only 3 subjects, which are math, science, and English. And the metric system was the highest mark is not an A or a letter, it's 6 points. Somewhat like IB, but yeah, it's 6.0, and then it decreases as your like grade decreases. Yeah, so I grew up in an international school, and because our subjects were mainly in English, and you know, even the name international school, we prioritize a lot of learning English grammar and like comprehension. We had like English lessons, and I remember our teachers would divide up the lessons like today on Tuesday it'll be like grammar, on Wednesday it'll be comprehension, stuff like that. So I'm speaking based on my own experience. So I'm not that sure how it goes in the government school. If it's the same, then maybe my experience wasn't that different. But to me, that's like, I'm just telling about my experience. Anyways, so I was the kind of like serious kid which took grammar very seriously. And I think I take that after my dad because my dad is the type to do the same. If we ever spoke like wrong grammar at home, he would correct us immediately. He would be like, what would he say? I think amongst the things that he always corrects us on is after we eat and he hasn't eaten yet or something, he'll ask us like, have you guys eaten? And I'll be like, I ate already, which he will be like, no, don't say that, it's wrong. It's like, I have eaten or something like that. So I took over that, and I took English super seriously, and so I was pretty okay in English. However, because I was in an international school and practically we were all learning the same things and growing up together, speaking English together, I wasn't like the best, but I was pretty good in English. And thing is, because my school was an international school, the Malay race was actually a minority. I think I had only like 5 Malays in my batch. And because we prioritized a lot of our English language, Malay was always put like to the side. We did not prioritize Malay at all. I think our Malay, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, our Malay subject only had like 30 minutes in the whole week of learning. And because of that, like, we truly did not speak Malay very well. I had to be tutored to speak Malay despite being Malay. which is kind of embarrassing, to be honest, if I recall that. But yeah, like, we had a half an hour Malay class every week. And because I was a minority, if I'm not mistaken, I was like either, okay, I only remember like standard 6 mostly, where I was like the only Malay in my class, or like there was another boy Malay in my class, Malay boy in my class. But because we were the minority and because we are Malays, all these other people would be asking us like to teach them for Malay like homework and stuff. Thing is, how little my school prioritized the Malay language was, I remember that in class all we had to do was do the exercise book, the workbook, which was a multiple choice question kind of like situation. I did have to write a few essays here and there, like we had to build bin ayat, to build sentences, and also write essays. Like, I did experience the aku sebatang pen era, but majority of the time spent in class, especially closer towards the upper primary years, because we were focusing more on checkpoint, it was literally multiple choice questions. But because we didn't want it, the teachers didn't want us to cheat, they would take off the answer sheets at the back of the workbook and collect them. However, because I was like one of the monitors at some point, I took the papers and then I took a picture of them and then I sent it to the teacher. And so because people would be coming up to me asking for me to give them the answer or like to teach them, because I was the only Malay, yet at the same time I had horrible Malay. Like, I barely ever spoke Malay. So like at the same time I didn't know the answer either. So what I would do was I would know like the next exercise we would be doing in the Malay class, and then I would literally memorize the answers from the answer sheets from the photo that I took, so that I would appear smarter in class. You get what I mean? Yeah, so that was that. And then talking about English in my school, our essays, we had to do a lot of essays. And I remember in standard 4, I remember this so clearly. I had a friend who wrote about her experience being robbed, and her essay got read to the class. So I thought that she was so cool. I remember thinking like, wow, I want my essay to be read to the class, you know? Like, to be such a good essay that teacher thinks, because our teachers don't really read our essays to class. So she had such a good essay that our teacher thought that it should be read to the class, like to show off, you know? And so I wanted to be that kid, like the kid who had the great essay that our teacher thought it must be shown off, kind of thing. But then I graduated primary and I forgot about that dream, kind of. It was like put in my mind at the back burner. And my mom wanted me to go into a boarding school. And so when I went to boarding school, I was so out of place, because first of all, my school uniform was a skirt, and the rest were like, I don't know, I don't remember it that well, but I remember being there with like a short skirt and feeling so out of place. And then there was the fact that I spoke mostly English, whereas the rest of them spoke Malay, and though I could understand, it was hard to communicate with them. And so when I got into this school, I remember thinking I remember being very worried and anxious, and telling my mom like, what if I'm not able to make friends, because what if they only speak Malay and then they want to be friends with this like international kid like that does not know how to speak Malay. And yeah, I was just very worried because I rarely spoke Malay in my life, like ever. Yeah, that was a whole thing. Like, I tried applying for a scholarship to go into this boarding school, and I didn't get it because I didn't have Malay as a subject that I took for my exams, like, because Checkpoint had only 3 subjects, and so I wasn't even able to apply to these scholarships. So anyways, I got really anxious to get into this school, and I was scared that I wouldn't be making any friends at all. But at some point I did befriend my bitmate, and then from there I evolved and had my own friends. And then I remember, because I wanted to start speaking more Malay, I tried practicing in front of them. So I would be having a normal conversation with them, but I would try speaking in full Malay. Like, that was like the challenge I put on myself. And I remember, I guess I was struggling so hard because I remember this so clearly. I remember my friend saying to me, Kirin, you know we understand English, right? I that has stuck with me until now. So I was that bad in Malay that I couldn't form proper sentences until my friend had to say that. Do you get what I mean? Like, which is embarrassing, because I am a Malay. But my high school made me speak a lot more Malay. Actually, the first day of school, because I was scared that I wouldn't be making friends as a non-speaking Malay, I tried to act as if I wasn't from an international school. I wanted to be those people who were from government schools, like I speak Malay, that kind of thing. And I remember I met one of my dorm mates. Her name was Sarah. And oh my god, I was acting like, oh hi, your name's Sarah? And they were like, oh, are you from international school? And I was like, in my head I'm like, oh no, what did I do? I'm pretty sure I spoke okay. Like, how do they know? Did they check somewhere? Did I ask someone? I don't know. And turns out it was the way I said Sarah, which I didn't even know there was a difference until someone pointed it out, because in Malay it's Sarah. Oh my god, I still remember that conversation so clearly until now, because I did not know there was a difference, because when I said her name Sarah, that just gave away the fact that I was from international school. It's also like how I have another friend named Azalea, and see, I still say her name as Azalea, but in Malay it's Azalia. It's those little things that I didn't even realize there was a difference, Anyways, so I stayed in the school for like a month or so before our first overnight. And I remember in the cousins group chat, I remember texting something in Malay, because I was getting more used to speaking Malay now with my friends, like not fully Malay, but here and there, like some Malay phrases. And I remember my cousins texting back like, oh my god, Kirin speaking Malay. Like, it was that bad. It was that bad. My whole family is, yeah. And I remember in the car during my overnight, I remember I said that expression like, Ya Allah. And my mom and my dad and my siblings were all like, oh my god. And they totally reacted like, oh my god. And yeah, it was just an experience trying to learn more Malay. But at the same time, it's not like my Malay was any good after that either, because I could speak Malay fluently now. Like, if you were to ask me to speak and have a conversation in Malay, I could totally do that now. But at the same time, like, writing and reading, like writing Malay and doing the exam for the subject is totally different. Like, that was so hard. That was like I wouldn't say that was my hardest subject, but it was like among the top 3 of my hardest like subjects. And I always had to take like extra lessons, and it was just embarrassing because all these other people, because it was a smart, like, people there were smart and stuff, and people would be scoring A's, and I'm here like, like, and teachers would be like, oh, your Malay isn't, it's those kind of judgment that I would get. And I remember like my English in that school was actually pretty good too, because at some point I even got like a 96 for my paper, which, if I remembering it again, it's like, that's crazy, a 96. I don't think I've ever gotten that high on a paper before for any other subject. And that landed me as the English committee of my batch. However, see, this is the point of me making this topic as well, is because I believe like language is a skill and it needs to be practiced. So lack of practice will make your skill decrease. Like, it will lessen your skill, I guess. And so because I've been practicing more Malay, speaking more Malay in the school after being there for a few months and stuff, my English suffered at the cost of that. And so in the future years of my high school, my English wasn't as good as it was in primary. At least I didn't think it was as good as it was in primary. And so I think by Form 4, or is it Form 5, I got like pecat as a English committee because I wasn't as good anymore. But it's fine. That was like totally fine. because there was the pressure of people coming to you asking for advice. And because I'm a very structured person, it's kind of hard to change what I think or what I learn about and what I've been practicing. So how I do essays might not be how other people are comfortable in doing essays. And so when people ask my opinion, yet the way I do essays is different from theirs, it can sometimes be very hard on me because I feel anxious, like, oh, this person is gonna totally judge what I'm saying because it's like, oh, she's not that smart, that kind of thing. I don't know why I was so worried about it then. But anyways, at the end of the day, my English isn't that good. I don't think it is, because I read other people's essays my age, and sometimes I just have to stop for a moment because it's like that good, because I'm like, wow, like where did you learn how to write that? You know, like my essays are very like basic, very structured, following the very basic essay structure, which is like intro, point 1, point 2, point 3, conclusion. Whereas there's other people who like write more creatively and they're able to make more like elaborate sentences and like decorate their words nicely, whereas mine is very straight to the point, because that's how I am in real life too. I'm very straight to the point, and that shows in my essays. So that was one thing also that I struggled with to write in Malay or English, is that my essays would be very short because it's very straight to the point. I didn't know how to elaborate much, and that was one thing I struggled with. But yeah. Anyways, then I went into college. So before I went into college to do IB, I did take a semester in Sunway, which I only took 3 subjects, I think. Yeah, which was English, math, and computer science. So I did a semester there, and I remember that the English class was the hardest class for me, because, which, you know, to think that I grew up speaking English, I thought because my English was pretty good because of the foundation I had from international school, that I wouldn't struggle as much in English. But especially in Sunway, that semester was pretty hard because the English was more literature based, and I'm not very good in literature. I'm more on the language side, I guess. I don't know. I just didn't like the literature part of English. I truly just enjoyed writing essays creatively in my own imagination, rather than having those different styles, like writing in the old style and stuff, which is what we learned. But that was fine. Did the semester, got an offer for a scholarship to do IB, went to do IB, and I remember my Malay tremendously improved even more in college because of how many friends I had that spoke more Malay compared to in high school. Although my Malay did improve, me and my friends still spoke English to each other majority of the time. And so in college, when I actually spoke more Malay with my friends, it totally improved my Malay, but at the same time it was at the cost of my English. And so I remember the first semester of my IB, like my 2-year IB course, I got a 6 on my English. And English was always a subject, like other than my like semester in some way, English was always a subject that I never had to study for. And so when I got a 6, to be honest, that was embarrassing, because I'm already like terrible in Malay. So in my head, I'm like, might as well be good in at least one language. And I'm not good in English either because I got a 6. That's what I was thinking. But then come semester 2, my essay was actually pretty good that it got read to the class. And if you remember, if you have been listening, that was like my standard 4 dream. And I remember like when my teacher read it to the class, I knew it was my essay, not because of what I wrote, but because of my handwriting, because anyone who knows me, my handwriting is humongous. It's always commented on by teachers. Anyways, so my essay got read to the class, and I remember like, oh my god, wow. And the standard 4 dream that I put on the back burner in my mind came forward. And I remember telling my friend, I was telling him like the story of how my essay got read, and then I told him the story of how I remember exactly what the essay that my teacher read out loud in Standard 4 was that made me had this dream. And yeah, to think that it was never something I really like thought about and spent time on to practice or like to actually build out goals to achieve this kind of like goal itself, this like milestone of getting my essay read. But it was something I did actually achieve. However, I'm still not saying my English is the best, because of course there's always people out there that are better, but generally I don't think my English is that good. You can tell from my IELTS score too. But I think that it was good enough that people considered me good, but it's not like the best where I would throw myself into writing competitions and win or something, that kind of thing. Another thing is, ever since moving to the UK, I don't understand how, because I feel like out of all people that learn English, it wouldn't be that hard for me to understand people who speak English here in the UK, because of how long I've been actually like practicing English very well compared to some people, which I actually like find very inspiring, how some people only learn English further into their life, like later into their life, and actually build up enough skill for them to score a good IELTS score and then get into the UK or wherever to study, and majority of them are speaking English. And because not only are they already like not as good in English, but they have to understand people with an accent, like, oh my god, like that's impressive to me, because at the same time, like, I'm someone who spoke English for a majority of her life. Like, it'll be embarrassing for me to say I don't understand English or I don't understand people speaking English, because what other language do I speak? And so because people were like so hard to understand the first semester here, it was honestly another embarrassing thing. But anyways, so at the end of the day, I believe strongly in grammar, and I actually keep up with grammar in the way that when I text in WhatsApp and stuff, I still use proper grammar. That when I first met one of my friends in high school, and I remember him saying to me, you text like you're writing an essay, like you're texting a teacher. And that hit me, because I'm like, oh, I didn't think it was that noticeable that, you know. But yeah, so I always knew that I could not be together with someone who didn't prioritize English and couldn't stand me correcting them, because I'm totally that friend who would correct your English. I don't know if you would think that person is like horrible, but that's me. But I don't do it in a mean way. Like, I totally I love correcting people and them learning from it. I truly enjoy it, because I knew from there, I know that person doesn't take it seriously. It's not like I'm offending them, but more so, you know, we all have things to learn. I need to learn Malay, so I love it when people correct my Malay too. But what was the point of this again? Oh yeah, so when people text me, I love to correct them. But I've learned that not many people enjoy that, so I only do that with very close friends or people I talk to very often. So there was this one time where this guy was picking a fight with me, and I got so fed up that at some point I just corrected his English, because I didn't want to reply to anything else he said, and it was bothering me that his English wasn't that good while he was fighting with me. At the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is, I'm not saying all of this to brag that, oh, I'm so good in English, because I'm not. Based on my IELTS score, based on other people's essays that I've read, which are way better, it's not like I practice every day, because the types of books I read are like either Wattpad books, which, you know, English isn't checked and like proofread, or like romance books, which vocabulary isn't widespread. So it's not like my English is improving or anything. It's just, I feel like international school truly laid out the foundation of my English language that I speak. And because of that, I feel as though my Malay had suffered, and that makes me think, because so sometimes I talk about it with my boyfriend, like, I don't know where I would want to send my kids to in primary, because I feel as though I wouldn't have been as good in English if I didn't go to an international school. You know, that's still on debate. One language I do regret not learning and actually like taking seriously is Mandarin, because in primary school I had to take Mandarin for like 6 years, and then in high school I took Mandarin for 3 years. And I've always stayed in the elementary class in primary. In primary, there was the advanced, intermediate, and elementary classes. I've always stayed in the elementary classes, because I guess I never tried to progress either, because you could progress. But I regret, because before I wore my hijab, my face is very Chinese looking, that even Chinese people think I'm Chinese, which, you know, I do have Chinese blood. My grandmother is fully like Chinese from China, like imported from China. made in China, that's my grandmother. So I do have Chinese blood in me, but I don't think I look that Chinese. But people think I look Chinese enough that even Chinese people confuse me as a Chinese. I remember there's so many instances where I can talk about this, where people would come up to me. So I remember going on a trip overseas to France or Italy, I don't remember. And this lady just comes up to me speaking in Mandarin. And I guess she was complaining about something because she was like angry. And I was just listening to her, like, I don't know when to interrupt you to say that I truly don't understand any word you're saying. All I understand is 我. Like, all I know in Mandarin is 我爱你. I know 安静, which is quiet. 来 is come. I learned in elementary school. I only learned like the basics, which were like fruit. Like 我喜欢吃西瓜. I don't even like watermelon, but that's what I remember. So this lady came up to me speaking Mandarin, and when she ended it, she looked at me expecting a response. Like her eyes, I could see how she was expecting a response. And I just did not have a response. I was saying to her in English, I'm so sorry, I don't understand Mandarin. And then I think my mom came over at that point and she realized that I'm Malay. So anyways, that was one instance. Another instance is before high school when I went to the surau because I was in my ponytail, my short skirt. Some people were like, oh my god, you're Muslim? I'm like, yeah, I am. Yeah, that was one thing. Not that Chinese can't be Muslim. I'm not saying that. It's just, yes. Anyways, that was the second instance. Another instance is when I had a tuition teacher for accounting. She was Chinese. And she was like, oh my god, are you Chinese? And I'm like, no, I'm not actually Chinese. And instead of Chinese, because I said I wasn't Chinese, she thought I was Japanese instead. Like, am I that, like, Asian looking that I don't look Malay? That kind of thing. Even when I went to this like camp, I was telling these people, these were all new people that I met during the camp, and I was saying to them, yeah, before I wore my hijab, like, I look very Chinese, so people thought I was Chinese. And when it came to staying at the place where we were staying for the camp, and I opened my hijab in front of them, and they were all like, oh my god, you do look Chinese. Yeah, it's instances like that. There's another one where when I was in Sunway, I joined the futsal club, and we always have these sessions where we would join with the men's futsal club, and there was once a team where all the people in my team were Chinese, and they were all speaking to each other in Chinese, because it was also like a strategy technique where they spoke to each other in Chinese so that the other team doesn't know what their next move is, but they expected me to know because they first talked to me in Chinese too. But yeah, so there's one thing that I regret not learning Chinese, because how cool would it be when people expect me to be Chinese and I can actually speak Mandarin to them and actually like act Chinese, that kind of thing. Another thing about Malay is that I thought SPM would be the last time I would ever learn Malay as a subject. And yet I was wrong, because in IB I had to take Malay as my second language, and we took Malay A, which is basically the literature side of Malay, and I was horrible, so horrible in it. And I remember during IRP, which is like the intensive, I don't remember what it stands for, IRP basically, but it's basically like a study session where all of us would just be grouped and we would combine all the classes taking that subject, and we would just learn the subject together. And I remember during that time, my group mates, like, of course, as a group, when you work together, you would expect everyone to chip in. But I was always considered a sleeping partner in Malay because you wouldn't want any of my opinions. Like, I remember that one time I said something, I gave my opinion, and I remember the look on their faces, okay? Like, their whole face said, oh, like, okay, we're not gonna use that idea, but thank you so much for trying, that kind of face. But more like a more degrading kind of look, kind of thing. But it's totally fine. I don't take offense to it because I know I'm not good at Malay. I just hate being a sleeping partner, but at the same time I know that if I say anything, that's the reaction I'm gonna get. So yeah, at the same time, I've always relied on other people in Malay, and I feel like many people got annoyed at me for that. So yeah, right now I can fully speak Malay. Macam sekarang, kalau saya nak cakap Malay, boleh saja. Saya rasa saya tidak ada accent yang biasanya akan ada. Okay, my Malay grammar is very bad. But saya rasa saya tak ada accent yang selalunya cikgu-cikgu akan cakap, orang yang selalu speaking, yang selalu bercakap Inggeris akan selalu ada accent tu. Tapi saya rasa saya tak ada. I don't know if I have. You tell me if I have. But itulah, saya rasa saya boleh je bercakap dan bertutur dalam bahasa Melayu. Kalau awak cakap dengan saya pun, saya faham je awak cakap apa. Kalau awak nak cakap buruk pasal saya akan faham je. And this comes to the point where I admit at some point in my life I did look at Malay and be like, why do I have to learn this? Because majority of the people speak English too. See, I'm in the UK, I'm studying in English. Yet I feel like now in the UK I actually appreciate being bilingual more. I love when I can speak to my friends in Malay and have no one else around me understand. And I just kind of regret not appreciating Malay as much as I think I appreciate Malay much more now. There's still a long way for me to go. And of course, I'm still very young. There's still so much for me to learn. Yeah. At the end of the day, I'm proud to be Malaysian. I'm proud to be bilingual. I'm proud to have learned Malay, to be able to speak Malay, to be able to speak English. And I feel like as though we should all start appreciating our languages more. Although I feel like maybe I'm the only one who doesn't really appreciate Malay as much as everyone else. Although I do now, you know. But yeah, so that's my first topic for my podcast. I don't think anyone will truly listen to this podcast, but it's totally like a good way for me to practice. So yeah, I think the next topic I'm going to talk about is agama, but I feel like that could be very controversial. So if you have any ideas on topics, please let me know. And please talk to me if you want on your opinions. At the same time, like I said, I don't think there's going to be any views on this video. But yeah, if you stayed until here, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed me hanging out with you. And I'll see you in my next one. Bye-bye.